Good evening. This is Cold News, and today we are going to reveal how Donald Trump forced NATO to make the most dramatic military spending commitment in the alliance's 75-year history, and why half of the member countries might break trying to fulfill it. June 25, 2025. The Hague, Netherlands. NATO Summit. 31 heads of state sign a joint declaration committing to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. Only one country refuses, Spain. Trump got what he wanted. But there is a problem. Only 9 countries in the entire world spend 5% or more of their GDP on defense. And most are in active war or under immediate existential threat. Ukraine, Israel, Russia, Saudi Arabia. In the next 10 minutes, you will discover exactly how Trump used threats of abandoning NATO to force this deal. Which countries can pay? Which ones cannot? And why this decision could break European economies or turn Europe into the world's largest military machine. Let's start with what actually happened in The Hague. June 24th and 25th, 2025. NATO Summit. Trump was on the ground for less than 24 hours, but was long enough. The final agreement states that allies commit to investing 5% of GDP annually in core defense requirements, as well as defense and security-related spending by 2035. The specific breakdown is 3.5% of GDP on military spending for troops, equipment, and ammunition, and 1.5% of GDP on defense-related infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, airports, seaports, and cybersecurity. Mark Rutte, NATO's Secretary General, stated there is broad support and total confidence. Pete Hegseth, U.S. Secretary of Defense, declared that Trump saved NATO and that European allies have finally listened. But here's the part most people missed. The 5% target more than doubles the previous 2% commitment established in 2014 after Russia annexed Crimea. And there's more. The 2035 deadline is short by NATO standards. The 2014 2% target had a decade-long deadline. This new 5% target has only 7 years from when it was announced in June 2025. There will be an interim review in 2029 to assess progress. Countries that are not complying will face diplomatic isolation and potential political or economic pressure from the U.S., according to analysts. And there is an important exception: Spain. Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, argued that 5% was incompatible with a state that provides social welfare to its nationals and that Spain could achieve necessary capabilities with just 2.1% of GDP. Trump responded by calling Spain's position very terrible and threatened that the country will pay double in future trade negotiations. Now, let's look at the brutal numbers that no one wants to discuss publicly. Currently, 22 of NATO's 32 members reached the 2% target, while only 10 countries are still struggling to reach even that mark. 0 NATO countries currently spend 5%. One that has already announced it will meet the 5% is Poland, which is already spending 4.7% in 2025 due to its border with Russia and a perceived existential threat. Lithuania and Estonia are also committed, as they are former Soviet republics with land borders with Russia. Kęstutis Budrys, Lithuania's foreign minister, says having real combat capabilities is existential. The UK also supported it, as it has a large economy and a tradition of robust spending. The Netherlands decided in June 2025 to increase its budget. But now for the serious problems. Germany finally hit 2% in 2024 after decades of pressure. With public debt at 62.5% of GDP, the German parliament had to amend the constitution to suspend the debt brake and allow for increased spending, though Chancellor Olaf Scholz shows resistance to going much beyond 2%. France is in a precarious fiscal situation, with debt at 112% of GDP and a negative outlook from rating agencies. Italy is even worse off, with debt at 135% of GDP and limited capacity to increase spending without a debt crisis. And the ultimate irony is the United States itself, which currently spends 3.4% of GDP on defense. To reach 5%, the Pentagon's budget would have to jump from $842 billion to over $1 trillion. The U.S. is the only ally whose spending has fallen since 2014. Meanwhile, Canada estimates reaching only 1.1% of GDP by 2030, essentially without a realistic plan. Economist Cullen Hendricks explains that the viability of military spending is proportional to the security situation. Countries spending more than 5%, like Ukraine, Russia, and Israel, are at war or under immediate threat. What does this mean for NATO countries not facing an imminent invasion? The fiscal impact is brutal. In France, for example, the required increase would be $87 billion per year. Where is this money found? Cutting social spending is political suicide. Raising taxes guarantees a recession, and increasing debt sends markets into a panic. Furthermore, there's the problem of where to spend. If the money goes to American weapons companies, the European economy does not benefit. Some analysts suspect Trump is making a demand impossible to fulfill to provide a pretext for leaving the alliance. Trump even said that the commitment to Article 5 depends on the situation. Ambassador Matthew Whitaker warned that Europe now has responsibility for its own defense. Mark Rutte tries to calm colleagues by asking them to stop worrying about the U.S. and focus on industrial investment. However, the U.S. is redirecting focus to the Indo-Pacific and wants Europe to take over its own defense so Washington can contain China. The final result puts Europe in an impossible position. If it doesn't reach 5%, Trump might abandon NATO. If it tries to reach it, it could break its economies. If it does reach it, it creates the largest collective military machine in the world outside the U.S. Trump forced NATO to more than double the spending target in just 7 years. 31 countries are committed, but reality shows only countries at war spend that much. Major European economies have massive debts, and half the alliance is in no fiscal condition to reach the goal without an economic crisis or brutal social cuts. Trump is forcing Europe to choose between fiscal collapse or permanent military dependence. While Europe tries to figure out the answer, Washington is preparing to pivot troops to the Indo-Pacific. NATO's survival depends on Europe footing the bill without breaking. And based on the numbers, half the alliance is heading for fiscal disaster. This is cold news. If you want to continue discovering brutal realities behind political headlines, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Understanding real numbers behind political promises is not optional. It is economic survival. Until next time.